Hi, everyone. Welcome to VISTA Table Talks. I'm Kim Chin, the Assistant National Director of the Up2Us Sports VISTA program. We're back again this year with the VISTA Table Talk series for the summer. On the first episode, we're joined by Summer VISTA, Robinson Rodriguez, Jensen Wolfe, and Tan Flint, along with Dr. Gabriel, to discuss the power of learning through loss in sport. I'm going to pass it over to Robinson now, who is going to lead us in this conversation for the next 30 minutes. Robinson, feel free to take it away.
Thank you, Kim. And yeah, the reason why I chose this topic is because I think obviously what we're doing as fans of at here Up2Us Sports is foundational is learning is to engage, train, and support coaches to transform youth programs and communities. And if you're going to be doing that as a coach, part of that is helping guide young people through losses, because very few teams go undefeated. Very few athletes go undefeated. I don't think many go undefeated their entire sporting career. And that's part of our vision as through sports-based youth development. And I'm grateful for the panel who are here, and I want to thank them all for taking their time out. And I'm just curious to any of you who wants to start this off, can any of you've all competed at sports, whether it's track, football, or the real football, which is soccer, but we call it soccer here in America, unfortunately. Can any of you remind me of like an experience of a time that you experienced a loss during the game? You're like, wow, that one really stuck out to me. That one really bugged me. And what did you do after the fact?
Yeah, I can go first. So experience of mine is that I say that the most painful loss that I experienced was when I played youth football, and I lost the only championship I ever played in youth football. I'm not gonna lie, it sucked. I was a big baby. I'm not gonna lie. I like laid on the ground crying for like a good 5 minutes. Even had parents coming up to me asking me was I okay. But yeah, that's a little bit about the one time that I felt like the biggest loss playing a sport. It was playing for a championship game for football. So yeah.
Out of curiosity, as a follow-up, do you think you had like the coping skills or anything like that well, actually, I think it's pretty obvious you didn't have the coping skills to process that loss, Tandarius. But like, why do you think that loss was so fundamentally heartbreaking at that moment in time?
Well, to be honest, for me, it was because that was like the first, so out of all the years I played youth football, that was like the first time I ever made it to a championship game in youth football out of like the 10 plus years that I played. So it was just heartbreaking for me because that also was my last season playing in youth football before I went on to try to play in high school. So that's why another reason why it was a little bit heartbreaking, because it was my last year ever playing youth football, and I wanted to go out as a champion, last year, but it didn't work out that way. And then, like I said, I think, like I said, I probably didn't have the best of skills of coping with, because like I said, I laid out on the ground for like 5 minutes crying like a baby. But yeah, it's an experience I learned from now. So yeah.
Thank you for sharing, Tandarius. I'm gonna pass it now to Jensen from our Baldwin Wallace runner. Thank you, Tandarius. Here is Jensen.
Yeah, I think probably the biggest loss I can recall is, well, I mean, in cross country and track, you lose a lot. Like, you're not going to win very often unless you're like a complete stud. So I'm used to losing, but it hurt really bad my senior year. It was the last cross country meet of the season. It was the regional meet, and we were trying to make it to state as a team. And I'd never been to the state cross country meet, and we weren't one of the favorites to qualify. You had to be like top 8, top 7 to qualify as a team, and we were the first team to not qualify, and we had like just missed it by a few points. So it hurt really bad. It was my senior year, last race. My dad was my coach, so I really wanted to make it, especially after losing my junior track season. So it hurt pretty bad.
Yeah, I can only imagine how that final loss of the season will hurt. And finally, we have Dr. Gabriel here, who, along with being a sports psychologist, also played collegiate soccer for at Indiana Wesleyan University for 3 seasons, also played in Puerto Rico's professional soccer league, and was a member of the Puerto Rican national soccer team.
For me, I resonate with what Tandarius said and Jensen said, but for me, any loss is heartbreaking. Like, I don't like to lose. I don't like it. So for me, all of them, like, I need like depending on the significance and the importance of the game, well, that will be how much time I need for myself away from everyone. So if it's a championship, it might be like half a day, 1 day. If it's playing cards, 10 minutes. So really for me, anytime that I lose, I do not like it.
Out of curiosity, you seem like you probably be like the person that'd be most well suited to handle these losses, better equipped than anyone, and you still take it a little bit difficultly. Is that normal for everyone to just still take, even someone as well trained in this area as you, to still take it difficultly?
Yes, I feel that, and even what Tenarius said, that that youth football game championship, he didn't handle it correctly. To me, handle it perfectly. Like if you lose, if there's something that you are going towards, it's a goal that you want, and you don't achieve it, well, to me, it's only normal and natural that you are going to cry, that you are going to feel like it is the end of something, and you are going to be unconsolable. I've experienced all of those three emotions when I lost, depending on what it is that I was achieving towards. So it's normal to lose, and those emotions that are associated with them, regardless of how you feel them, it's perfectly normal. It's a part of your process.
All right. Yeah, because we play sports, like I mentioned, not everyone's going to go undefeated, so these losses are normal. How do we, I guess, better cope, learn how to? I'm just curious, like how well, I think maybe the way to take it is really, how have your coaches prepared you throughout your sporting careers to help you learn, okay, these losses are normal? How do you, like, how have they shown you, like, it's okay to a loss as long as you've given your effort or something like that? Like, what have they talked to you about, explained to you about, hey, like this process of playing a sport and trying to get better?
I think a big thing for me in high school was learning, like, if something went wrong or just a race, it just didn't go my way. We were told like we get a 24-hour period to like mope and be sad over it. And then once that 24 hours is over, like we just have to stop and move on and get ready for the next race, because we race week after week. So it's just like 24 hours, that's it. You have to move on and you have to get better. Use that loss and that bad race to prepare you for the next one and what went wrong. But don't spend your whole week just dwelling over how bad it was.
Yeah, I have to go along with Jensen here, kind of. So, for instance, like for me, when I like my story about youth football earlier, it was seasons to where we wasn't that good and we lost a couple games in the season. It's basically coaches like how telling Jensen, hey, this is just this one game. You have 24 hours to move on into the next game, because we had a game next week. He just used to tell us, hey, we may have lost today, but get over it in the next couple hours. Got practice coming up this week. Use this motivation from this loss, fuel in the next week's game. What we need to prepare for, what we need to be better at. Just using that loss as fuel for the next one. It's just something to put something. You have something that motivates you for the next game, basically.
My experiences with thing in Puerto Rico were different. I think in Puerto Rico, like after a game, like the coach really didn't say anything. He would say a couple things, but you could even tell that they were upset. So like in Puerto Rico, we wear our emotions on our sleeves, so we're very expressive. So in terms of that, there wasn't a whole lot of compassion. It was more like very blunt, like we weren't good enough, and it is what it is. And sort of like we all left. But that came after in practice. Like looking at it objectively, okay, what didn't we do? We changed the game plan. It was this, we didn't execute. But right after, there wasn't a whole lot of empathy, compassion, or sort of many of those things.
You mentioned like it's part of it is that you were raised in Puerto Rican, but do you think maybe part of it was just like a different generational gap to it, that it was just like your coaches were like, I feel like coaches have generally understood better why it is to like handle these things with better care. Do you think it was anything generational, or do you think it was more of a cultural difference of how things were approached?
I would say both. It's one, I don't feel that one is better than the other. Because to me, there needs to be balance. There should be balance. Like I can criticize Jensen, but in the same way, with the same intensity, I have to praise Jensen. If she does something as an athlete, she's going to realize that she didn't run her best race. I don't feel that as a coach that is the time for me to criticize Jensen, because it's not going to help her. It's not going to be effective. That's the moment to be compassionate, to lift her up, for her to remind herself, look at all the things that you did in small dosage. Because I feel like after a race, she's not going to want to be hearing any of those things. And then afterwards, in practice, that's when we start to look at it very specific. Okay, this is what we didn't do. We need to improve on this, on this, on this. So I feel it yes and no in terms of answering your questions. Culturally, like in Puerto Rico, we're more direct. We're not afraid of confrontation, arguments, which I feel that in the US, that's something that you get depending on where you are in the US, the culture, the team dynamics. So it'll vary.
Yeah. To piggyback a bit off what Dr. Gabriel said, I'm wondering, Jensen or Tan, did either of you have a coach that picked the wrong moment to tell you something when you didn't do something right?
Maybe my dad. My dad was one of my high school coaches, but that was also my dad. So he knows how to like get me like going for the next race. Like he knows that he can kind of push the boundary a little bit more on me than he could other kids. Like he wouldn't do it in front of people. He wouldn't like, but when we get like home, and not like in a bad negative way, he would just be like, hey, like this is the facts. I'm not going to sugarcoat to you. Like you didn't run very well. And he knows that like that's how he could get me going. He did the same thing when I played basketball for him. He would pull me onto the bench and he would scream at me and I'd be fine and I'd play really well, just because he knew like that's how it worked for me. But he knew like that didn't work for other kids. But then like I have coaches now who like aren't like that, but they also know like I'm one of those kids that like they don't have to sugarcoat it. They can just tell me straight like what I did wrong. I had a high school coach. He wasn't afraid to tell me. He was also really close to me, so he wasn't afraid to get on me. And then my college coach now, we'll sit down and discuss things, and like he is completely truthful to me, and I respect it a lot, because like that's what I want to hear as an athlete, is just like the complete truth of what I did wrong.
Yeah, thank you. Tandaris, do you have any experiences with this? Like coach picked the wrong moment to be like, hey, you missed I forget what position. You think you played running back, fullback. Like, hey, you missed you didn't carry the ball for enough yards, something like that.
Oh, well, I think the only times that kind of happened to me, it was a little bit of my fault too. Is not paying attention and doing what I was supposed to be doing, following the play the correct way. But it usually just comes from me doing, stuff sometimes when I did play football. It was just me missing an assignment. But stuff like that, it didn't bother me, because I need to know that during the game. Because when I was, when I played football, I was always one of those people that was super competitive. So, if I messed up something, the coach got on me about it, I'm like, all right, coach, I got you. I'll fix that. And then, go out there and play and fix that mistake. But yeah, it's like, I think as Jensen says, like for me, like some of my coaches that I had, they know me for years, so it didn't really bother me that much. When I did play. So it's like, yeah, they know me, they know how I play, and I know how they coach. So it's like, it didn't really bother me as much, I will say. But I had a few that did it. But like I said, it didn't really bother me, because I just knew how the type of player I was. I liked it, that criticism right away, and then so I can fix it, don't make the same mistake again, especially during a game. You don't want to make the same mistake twice, because it might cost you points. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think to tie all this in together, I think this is kind of what Dr. Gabriel was pointing to. It's like, how important is it for coaches to know their athletes? And like, how big is it, like that relationship piece that coaches know, hey, I can push you a little bit more than someone else, like Jensen's father can push Jensen a little bit more than Jensen's father can push, say, or a different player on the team, because that relationship just isn't there.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. It's all about, like I said, how my coaches knew me for years, and so they knew like how they could push me. So yeah, I agree with you.
All right. Thanks. And I think one point I should have mentioned earlier is because when we did the introduction and we were speaking about losses and one specific loss, obviously not all losses feel the same. And my curiosity is why not? You can remember that one bad loss, right? But like there's a lot of other losses in between that you may not necessarily remember. Why would those losses roll off your back more so than others?
I would say because sometimes those losses are not as meaningful as some might be. So that's why I would say for me it's like, well, I can get over some losses very easy. They're not as meaningful, as I mentioned, like the championship game I was talking about earlier. So yeah, that's how sometimes why losses don't feel the same for me. Some are not as meaningful as the ones that might have happened to as well. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think some losses, like you also have to understand the setting you're in. Like for me, this past track season, I was at the conference outdoor meet, and I was running in the 10K, and I knew I was supposed to get last. I did get last, and I was a little bit embarrassed, but like not too much because I knew it was going to happen. I was in a pretty loaded field. There were 3 national qualifiers in that race, and I'm pretty sure like the meet record got set in that race. So even though like I did get the pity clap and I got lapped probably 3 or 4 times by the leader, like it didn't matter to me that I got last because I still was like celebrating at the end. Like I ran 2 huge PRs just within one race. So I was really happy with it. So it wasn't something that bothered me at all.
Nice.
And Jensen, just to pick up on what you said, like in a way you're contradicting yourself. Because you mentioned that you did 2 PRs in that race. You got last. So for me, hearing you, well, you didn't lose.
Yeah,
you set 2 personal records in that race.
Yeah, that's really fair. I guess I've never really looked at it that way. We definitely were celebrating like I won the race. I was getting hugs from like all my coaches and teammates. So yeah, that's definitely a good point.
Yeah, and I think that kind of touches in one of like the crux of this things is like how do we learn through losses and take something like what Dr. Gabriel just mentioned with Jensen, like it was ultimately she finished last, but there was still a lot of positive in there that she was able to set 2 personal records. How are we able to see, I guess, the forest from the trees in that scenario when it may not necessarily seem like it's possible?
Like I feel that it depends on the sport. With track, like I've learned that you're really not competing against the person that's next to you, you're competing against the time. And if you get a certain time, then it'll determine if you reached your goal. So I feel that depending on the sport, that concept of losing, and with track, it's sort of like a progression. At the beginning, you're hitting certain times, so that at the end, you are at this level. But in team sports, sort of like football and soccer, it's really if you win or you don't win. So like assigning significance to one game versus another, it's still going to sting. Like if you don't like to lose, like I always tell my athletes, it really doesn't matter if you don't like something, you don't like it. Like it doesn't matter if you put flowers on it, like if you dress it up, it's still a loss. You didn't reach your goal. To me, one of the things that I work with a lot of athletes is acceptance. Once you accept, then you can move forward. If you don't accept, you're going to be stuck.
Out of curiosity, when you say acceptance, do you mean accept the fact that you may lose or accept the fact that you have lost, or both?
And to me, I can accept that I lost. To put it in this way, Robinson, like I can accept that I lost to Darius. Now, that doesn't mean that I think that Darius is better than me. It's just that based on the rules of that game, Darius had more points than me. But if we play again, I'm going to beat him. So a lot of people add things to acceptance, meaning if I accept, that means that I'm okay with it, that I like it. And that's where people get stuck, because if for you losing is unacceptable, it's going to be unacceptable for the rest of your life. So a lot of people try to justify why they lost lost, or try to convince her, no, it's okay that I lost in that race. Well, yes, I pointed out to Jensen, well, you had 2 PRs. It doesn't erase the fact that she was last in the race. So depending on what she looks at, but if she looks at it as a whole, things balance out.
Yeah, no, we appreciate that a lot. I guess to piggyback a little bit off of that, I remember just last week as I was preparing for this, I did read an article that mentioned, part of the reasons that the athletes that are best prepared to win, they can expect that they may lose one time. Those people who expect perfection may end up burning out because they expect to always win, and it just feels a lot more. I guess I'm wondering, to any of you, does this sound like counterintuitive based off how we generally treat sports in America, and we learn about sports as a youngster that you have to always win? Is this a bit counterintuitive, or does this actually, does any of this actually resonate?
I would say that mentality is what I had growing up, but after playing sports and life, I learned that you're not always playing to win, because you're always gonna lose. So I just find that saying a little counterintuitive, because I guess for me, the standpoint of me, I've done a lot of stuff in life and life experiences. I learned that it's, you lose, you lose a lot, but you're not gonna always win at things. Basically, what I'm trying to say. So I just learned that you're not gonna always win. It's always gonna be some losses here and there.
All right, awesome. I'm just wondering, why do you all feel like, if any of you feel this way, do we need to learn how to process losses properly? Or do we need to learn how to process our losses our own? Because I think this is also a large part of what the discussion's been about. You lost, what do you do after the fact? How do you continue forward, even though that you've lost? Dr. Gabriel mentioned there's a bit of an acceptance. The athlete has to accept that they have lost, but it doesn't necessarily make them worse than the other person. They can still, their next time, beat them. How do you accept that? How do you process that loss in order to move forward?
I feel that losses are the greatest teachers. And that's how people build resiliency. If you look at resiliency, someone who has a lot of resiliency, well, they've gone through a lot of things in their life. If you've been fortunate enough that you haven't gone through anything, you're not going to be resilient. If Jensen's always been first in every single one of her races, number one all the time, since she first started to now, well, she can lose in practice and it's going to be heartbreaking for her. And for me, it's going to be you just lost in practice. Why are you crying? Why are you being upset? Because it's the first time that Jensen has experienced a defeat. Now we look at defeats, especially athletes. Defeats are exceptions. If you look at it, you are more successful than you are unsuccessful. So those stand out. Now, a lot of people keep going back to the losses, and they keep going back to it and back to it and back to it. But to me, if you look at them objectively, what can I learn from that? And Jensen and Tadarius have mentioned this. You look to your past to learn something. Once you learn it, how does it help to keep going back and revisit it if you already learned it? The acceptance and really losses. Michael Jordan wouldn't be Michael Jordan if he didn't lose in high school. He'd still be a great athlete because he's a great athlete. I don't think he would have been the greatest if he hadn't lost.
Yeah, and that's also Michael Jordan, who got kicked off of, I believe, his varsity team. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he couldn't make it to his varsity team. It's there's so many slights that Michael Jordan had, and obviously look at what happened. He became symbolic for being one of the greatest winners of all time. I think he mentioned it himself. He's missed how many free throws or how many field goals in games in general, but those are why he's the greatest of all time, because he just kept going afterwards. If any of you have anything else to add to that, that'd be really awesome. If not, I'm wondering, what have you all learned from like those big losses? This is for all three of you. I mean, I think you all mentioned this a little bit, but I'm just wondering in general, what have you learned from big losses in your lives in general?
I think it goes back to like the whole being resilient thing. It's just getting back and doing it again. It's not the end of the world, especially like also like different levels of sport. Like I think only like 7% of athletes go on to go play in college. So like you're losing in like middle school, youth sports, high school. Like it's not that big of a deal. It's not the end of the world. It sucks. It hurts. It's heartbreaking. But at the end of the day, like it's just teaching you how to process it at the end of the day and how to keep up and doing it on. And it's like, it's not just sport that these things are going to happen. It's real life that things are going to knock you down. You might not get a job you want, but you got to keep applying for jobs. You can't just stop and let it get you down. So it's just teaching you things, basically.
Yeah, I agree with Jensen. It's just, it teaches you that, like I was saying earlier, that life is always not about winning. Because I know from, like I said, personal experience, I took a couple L's in life, and I learned from that you just, got to bounce back, just keep grinding at it. It just taught me that, like I said, things don't work out the way you want them to. It just shows you got to, sometimes focus on going in a new direction, or just keep grinding at, the one, thing that you've been trying to get at. And just like I said, Jensen, it's all about just teaching you, life lessons in the end for me when losing. Because like I said, you don't ever win. I've learned that a lot. You don't never win. So yeah.
And you to Darius, I would ask, like, define winning and define losing.
So okay, I can give for example of like what I mean by like winning. So for instance, like in my undergrad, when I was at University of Georgia, I thought I was going to be a business major. Didn't get accepted to the business school. So I took that as a loss. But I say me winning in this situation is, thought I was going to be a business major, ended up being a sports management major. And so, like I said, came out winning in this situation is because I'm now in grad school. I'm getting my master's, something I thought I would never do. So that's been why the situation was a win for me. And also in my grad program, I got to do a research project, and I shared this with Jensen and Robinson last week. That was something I never done before. So that was another win for me. I got to, actually research something and then present that research at a conference, which was, like I said, it's a win because like it's something I've never done in my life. So like winning for me is like when something doesn't work out, but it leads me in a new path and it actually takes me in more directions and get to do more stuff that I've done. So it's like I said, it's being a master's program, in a master's student in my master program, I've got to do a lot more stuff in life now than I probably would did being a business major, basically. So that's why I say like that losing that way showed me that I can win in another area in life, and being a sports management major, basically.
And I would say that the loss that you had at youth football helped you process the loss that you had in business school.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that because like literally when I got the email that I didn't get accepted, I was like, I kind of was upset about it for that day. And I was like, all right, that just, shows me this is not where I need to be in life. And, I went and talked to my advisor, we switched my major. And then, like I said, everything worked out to where I am now. And like you said, it's just, me losing that championship showed me just like, hey, you can pout about it now, but, you got to get back to work and just, figure out where to go from here. So, yeah, I agree with you with that, about that.
One of the things that I, even when I was working with students, is like, get your F out of the way, because then you know exactly what it is. Failing is failing, regardless if you're 3 years old or 48, 50, 60. It's not a pleasant experience to go through.
Mm-hmm.
But if you go through a loss very early, then you allow yourself to process and let go of all of those emotions. Like Daenerys said, like I threw down and I cried and I acted like a baby. Well, based on the age that he had, for people, it was acceptable that he did that. And he felt comfortable enough to do that. It may have been that he didn't like doing it. He learned from it. Experience a loss again? Well, I'm not going to cry. I'm not going to get to the floor and mope around. For Jensen, you were taught 24 hours, which, yeah, I would agree. You have to give athletes time by themselves to process their losses. And giving a time frame, well, in a way, lets you know that, okay, like I'm going to get 24 hours where I can do whatever I want. If I want to sit in a corner and sulk, I can sit in a corner and sulk. But come Monday, back to work.
Yeah, thank you. Out of curiosity, have any of you, like after a game loss or something like that, or a track meet loss, have any of you like had to go to a therapist to speak to it, or in Dr. Gabriel's situation, how would you recommend to some like not a specific athlete, but just in general, like when would you recommend to somebody, hey, maybe you should go to a therapist after a loss, or a sports psychologist after a loss?
For me, I look at it's coming to see me as going to see a dentist. When athletes come to me is because of something that's going on. Now, if everything's going okay, then I don't expect an athlete to come see me because everything's okay. What are we going to work on? Yes, I'll enjoy the conversation, but I also don't feel that every single person needs to go to a psychologist or a sports psychologist. Like Robinson and Jensen, you guys have eyeglasses, so you see an ophthalmologist more often than I see one. But one of the things is stigma. There is stigma in sports, especially around mental health. Just because in the team that you are, in the environment that you are, it's welcoming, they're accepting, they encourage you to seek sports psychologists. That doesn't negate all of the years of messaging that you've heard growing up. That you have to be tough, that you have to tough it out, that you don't show emotions, you don't cry. Now you're being weak. So when I'm working with student athletes, that's something that I have to acknowledge. And depending cultural factors and depending on what you grew up, there's going to be more barriers for you to come see me. Now, but when I'm working with athletes, I tell them, like, listen, if you hurt your ankle, where do you go? I'm going to go trainer or the doctor. So if emotionally you're experiencing something that you can't handle, then who are you going to see? You come see me because that's my area. Because at the end of the day, when you're looking at a season, and Jensen can look at it, she can look at all of her track meets last year. She's not going to be able to remember if she had a sore toe in one meet or she was experiencing anxiety. At the end of the day, she's going to remember, I didn't perform well in that meet. And that's all we're talking about. It's performance. Anxiety, depression will impact you the exact same way as your knee, as a shoulder. It impacts performance. And the relationships that you have, like family dynamics, a breakup, that's going to impact your performance. So you feeling that, okay, if I can't handle it, then who is the professional that can help me get over it?
Yeah, definitely. And I missed a question that someone just sent me, and they were wondering how do we better learn how to cope with losses? Because some people have extreme reactions, like getting violent or hurting people with extreme anger. How do we better learn to cope with losses for individuals like that? Is that simply just going through to a sports psychologist, something like that, or like speaking out with someone or having a mentor come to them?
All of the above, but a lot of people react, they extreme anger. Well, there's nothing wrong with anger. It's really what you do with that anger. I mean, punching is not a bad thing. It just depends on what you punch. Throwing something, it's not bad. It just depends on what you throw. Like there's benefits and consequences to every single thing that we do. If I punch a wall, benefit is I'm no longer going to have that energy. I'm going to be tired because I punched it. So my anger is going to come down. consequence, you might have a broken hand, you might have caused a dent to the wall, so there's financial implications, and people are going to ask what you do. But if you go to the gym and you beat a punching bag, and someone walks around, they're going to encourage you. Be like, yeah, good job, keep at it. Same behavior, depending on the context. In one, you get looked down on, and the other one, you get praised. So it's really you picking and choosing where and how you're going to display that anger.
Yeah, totally understand. One thing I was doing this, I didn't even know about this. Up2Us Sports, we started partnering with the Booth Ferris Foundation. It's in response to the issues with mental health crisis in order to better equip coaches, train and support young people with mental health issues. And I found that really important. And I think it says, just what makes the case, because we believe that our coaches can do more. And one of the most important parts is obviously impacting a young person who's going through a mental health issue. But I guess that deals more broadly with mental health, not specifically with losses, but at times it can happen through losses. How important, I guess, is it for coaches to become, I guess we touched on this a little bit, to become equipped with some skills of helping young people out with mental health issues, or specifically, because obviously losses can add further strain on mental health. How important is it now that some coaches are getting this kind of training? Anyone wants to go?
Like it's great, but Jensen and Tadarius, and even for me personally, the best way that a coach can help their athlete is knowing their athlete, knowing how I can talk to you. If Jensen likes me to be blunt, straightforward, that's how we communicate. If I try to sugarcoat things, Jensen's going to get upset, Tadarius is going to get upset, and that's going to impact our relationship. So getting to know your players, that's the key thing. And recognizing when you need to hand something off to a professional, which at times, one of the things that I found working with coaches, they like to be in control of things and they want to handle everything. Well, I can work with Jensen on her performance, but I don't know the technical aspects of running. So I can't go to her practice and look at Jensen and say, no, you're going to change your running style because the anxiety that you're experiencing is impacting that. So let's change it. I'm overstepping my grounds in that moment. And at times I feel that coaches try to do too much, but they're not trained to do that. So it's really recognizing when I need to hand something off, when I've reached my limit. Okay, now this is something that is above my pay grade. Let me get you to the right person.
Yeah, I kind of agree with reword that, sorry. But yeah, I agree with Dr. Gabriel saying, just, basically how, coaches knowing when they need to hand something off to, someone else. Because as he mentioned, and my experience now working in athletics, a lot of coaches try to do too much when they're technically not qualified to do that. They're not their job title. So it's just like he said, getting to know, especially another thing, knowing how your players are, especially if they're youth players, because some kids, they can take the criticism or some can't. But yeah, just basically like Dr. Gabriel was saying, just making sure a coach should know when they need to, get someone else involved, when they know they can't handle the situation on their own. Just know when, like you said, basically passing it off to someone else that, more qualified, help with that, with those athletes dealing with whatever they're dealing with, it be a loss or mental health, basically.
Yeah, and I'd say like piggybacking off of that, but also like, I think a big thing is leaving the door open for your athletes to come talk to you. Especially, I think this more coming from the college level, but my coach, like, he's always there for us to talk to him, like 24/7. I've sat in his office and cried before. And like this past year, I was going through a tough time with being homesick and like transitioning to college athletics. I was having a really tough time. And there was a day I just had to go into his office and just bawl my eyes out. And he just listened to me rant. And he tried to help me talk, but he also let me do most of the talking. And I kind of guided the whole conversation. but he just like kind of spoke from experience, and we just had that conversation. I think having that resource there is like really important. I know other teammates have had the opportunity to just go talk to him and cry in his office. And one of my assistant coaches there, she said like she never really had that resource as much at her program where she ran in college. So just for us having that resource and our coach being willing to listen to us is like really huge for us. And I think it makes him very trustworthy as a coach also. And I know that I can go to him whenever I have an issue. I was just actually talking to my roommate the other day. She lives 5 hours from campus. I live 2.5 hours from campus. So when we're on campus during the school year, like our parents aren't around. We were freshmen last year. So like for us, our coach basically acted as a parental guide to us. And so that was like who we went to when we had those issues, that if we needed to talk, like if we couldn't get a hold of our parents on the phone, like he was the person we go talk to. So really it's just important, like having that resource and having the door open there.
Yeah.
And I couldn't agree more with what both of you said. Knowing that you can go to your coach and talk and feel that they're going to hear you, that right there will decrease the amount of emotions that you're experiencing tenfold, and it won't reach my level. Because what Jensen described, yeah, like there's a ton of athletes that come to see me, but a ton of athletes that don't have what Jensen has, that feel comfortable to go to their college's office and just cry and feel afterwards, wow, like he actually listened to me, like, oh, I can go to him. That's huge.
Yeah, it's extremely important. Is there anything that you all feel like I missed or anything that you want to add? Just let me know right now. If not, then I want to thank Jensen, Tandarius, and Dr. Gabriel for being here for this table talk. I want to thank Kim for setting this up. On behalf of Up2Us Sports, I'm Ramos Rodriguez. I want to thank everyone for listening. And once again, I want to thank the panel for being here. This was a really great talk and I really appreciated it. Thank you so much.